you have like a fake beard, like something from the what's that movie with the Soggy Bottom Boys?
I'm not Googling that either.
No,
I know.
Nobody.
Like,
That's a legit movie. The Soggy Bottom
I know
Boys.
it is.
From,
That doesn't sound legit. That's for sure.
What is that? It's got George Clooney in it.
Boy Meets Teacher Part 3. I don't know.
What movie is that? Boy Meets Teacher? That sounds
Exactly.
worse than Soggy Bottom Boys. Oh, brother, we're out though. That's what it is. Oh, brother, we're out though. Good movie. But yeah, they wear a bunch of fake beards in there.
Well, we're back again.
So
Here we are.
Awesome.
yes, sir. We are back this week with the one and only Corbett Lunsford. Corbett,
Hello.
thanks for stopping by on our non-syndicated, simple little YouTube show.
Of course, I only do non-syndicated YouTube shows. I hate the syndicated ones.
We do appreciate. We were hoping that just having you on here would somehow lead to our TV success in some way, but
Awesome.
I
Let's
don't
do
know
it.
if we can follow your coattails or.
I could put in a good word at PBS. I don't know what that does at all, even for myself. But
If they need like a bearded guy and two schmucks, and we'll be there.
they don't need that. But I will put in a word.
You never know.
Maybe we should tell the guys and the viewers what PBS is, because a lot of guys don't know.
Everyone knows what PBS is. Come on.
Hey, I didn't know what PBS was.
You live in Canada, dude.
Well, hey, that's why I didn't know.
Wow.
Welcome.
All my years, I don't think I've ever had to explain to anybody what PBS is. And I've had to explain some dumb things.
Is PBS the channel with the face on it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I
Good
know
job.
what it is. Awesome.
Good job.
See? I've also never met anybody so excited to know what PBS
Hey.
is.
Like, you know, I
Or
would
was
think
was that a pitch to me to start explaining about the show?
maybe, but you know, it's all right. It's all right.
But yeah, so we would officially like to turn the floor over to you, Mr. Lunsford, for a few minutes and just introduce yourself. There may be one or two people out there that don't know who you are and what you do and aren't familiar with your body of work.
Absolutely. So my name is Corbett Lunsford. First thing that I always like to tell people is that I used to be a musician. I used to play piano for ballerinas for a living. And so I'm a beginner at this. I've only been doing what I do in the building industry for 12 years. And so I always like to, and it's Friday night. So can we all do this real quick? Because this is a fun thing to do. Everybody raise your right hand.
Mm-hmm.
Repeat after me. Sometimes.
Sometimes.
Sometimes I'm an idiot.
I'm an idiot.
It's that easy, literally.
Mhm.
So I decided to be an idiot and get into the building industry, and I started testing stuff. So I use infrared cameras and blower doors and duct tightness testers and pressure gauges and moisture meters and blah, blah, blah. I've gotten into chemistry and microbiology now, but basically the kind of scope of what I do is focus on testing the physics, chemistry, and microbiology of homes, specifically inside of them. I don't really care too much about outside. And then also explaining that. And so we have a YouTube channel called Home Performance. We have a television show on PBS, which is public television. It's just basically like free. It basically means that I make a show and then I give it to them and they never pay me. That's what PBS is.
It's like a voluntary.
That's why I never heard of it. Okay.
Right, exactly. So the show is the first ever television show about the science of homes. It's a science show that is about homes. And it's the first one that's ever been made, which is crazy to me. But also, I know why nobody's done it is because it's very, very difficult to do. And so Grace and I, my wife and I, have been married for a while. We're partners, and she's a film production person and an actress. And so we kind of like have taken the technical side and the media side and tried to make them, one thing. And so just kind of getting the message out to both professionals and homeowners so that we can kind of do this with using science language, and asking for proof that certain metrics were met.
Mhm.
So not saying I want a mini split or I want all mini splits in my house, whatever that means. Is that a good thing or not? We could have a whole discussion about that. But, what do you want out of your house? Do you want it to be, and I personally, I'm just going to go ahead and start a fight right now. I think if you're selling comfort, if you sit down with a husband and wife and you say, we're going to make you more comfortable. No, you're not, because I could take any of you guys, and you probably have partners, anybody who's watching. If I sit you and your spouse down at the same table and I ask you, what number is the perfect number on the thermostat? Is it the same number?
No.
It's not. It's not the same number. You're going to make her more comfortable. And then you're going to give him the ability to control the comfort when she goes out of town. And so the control thing is really what it's all about. It's like getting the house to be able to be tuned to whatever you want. And I'm a musician, so I think a lot in terms of like musical analogies, but tuning homes is really what I have tried to practice doing for 12 years.
That's why in my house I have our thermostat, but then next to the thermostat I have a a painted oil painting of myself, and you open that up and there's a safe, and in that safe is the actual thermostat that controls the system. This way I am in control, and the other people just think they're in control.
Nice.
It works much better.
Yeah, exactly. You would be a good dictator.
Oh yeah, that's what I'm talking. That's what I like to hear. That's what I like to hear. That gives me motivation to do better for the world. I can run my own ductwork. I can run my own country.
Sweet.
Be the next Bill Jong-un.
Close enough. Close enough.
You know? So, segueing into a little bit of the conversation we had before the show, Corbett, we were talking about you are currently living inside of your 200 square foot tiny home on wheels. Is that correct?
Here, I'll show you around. Right now, I'm in the dining booth. That's where my 2 daughters sit. I have a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. Here's where me and my wife sit. And then there's our kitchen. There's our office. There's our bathroom over there. And underneath me is our sleeping underloft where our bed is. And when we get ready for bed, we set up 2 pack and plays for my daughters, and they sleep right there in the hallway. So it's 200 square feet, and we built this ourselves. It's called the Tiny Lab, but we built it to teach people about the science of homes, basically. So like if I was to come to, you know, wherever we are in the country, some people in Arizona may be watching this, and I go to your town and I say, hey, do you want to come to a seminar about building science? And no, like you don't want to do that. I've got other things to do. Do you want to tour my tiny house on wheels?
Sure. I do.
Yeah. Am I allowed to use, it's Friday night, I don't know.
Yeah, say what you want.
Overtime, anything.
F-bombs,
so yeah,
S-bombs.
like lines of 50 people waiting to come inside my stupid tiny house, which like I don't say stupid because I'm not a fan of tiny houses. This house is amazing. It is not $30,000. In fact, I would say if anybody really thinks tiny houses are a thing, you should go and talk to some tiny house builders. Most of them went bankrupt really quickly because like it can't make sense business wise. This house would have cost $125,000 if I did not build it myself and get a lot of the stuff donated.
Wow.
And like it's 200 square feet. That's $600 per square foot.
Jeez.
That doesn't make any sense, right?
No,
so nobody's going to do that. And you don't own any land, and you're on wheels. The reason that they're always on wheels is so that you can run away when they find you and tell you can't do that. So it's just dumb. It's like dumb. It's not a real thing. No offense to anybody who like lives in a tiny house. I live in a tiny house. I'm with you, but I feel like most of them smell like a dirty sock. I have 2 cats in here. We've all lived in here for 4 years. It smells great in this house, and it's not because it's built out of pallets and we had some elbow grease and some good attitudes. It's because we took the physics and the chemistry and microbiology really seriously, and we tuned every single thing. And my favorite thing was when an engineer would come in here and I would watch him, you know, look around, and then he would say, why did you do that? That looks like a dumb idea. And I would get into a half-an-hour conversation, and at the end of the half an hour, he would say, this is amazing. I can't believe that I haven't heard about this before, and I need to go tell all my partners about this.
Wow.
So like that's the kind of stuff that I feel like is really, when you start getting into the visible and invisible things that are happening around you at home, especially now that we're in COVID land, there's all kinds of invisible stuff that like matters a lot.
Slightly off topic here. A majority of people that enjoy tiny house living are minimalists. Would you consider yourself a minimalist?
Sure. Yeah, I consider myself a minimalist. I would not consider my wife a minimalist. And if you asked her, I bet she would tell you that she's absolutely not. She was a debutante, and like she likes nice stuff. So part of my job here was to build a house that was like nice enough. You can see that this is not an ugly space. And so like and this is not very clean. So I'll just, please forgive me. But I didn't want her to divorce me after, 12 years of marriage, and we moved into this thing. And suddenly she's like, no, this sucks. Mm-hmm. So, it's important to have a minimalist attitude, but you don't have to really be a minimalist because it's temporary. Nobody does this for permanent if they're in their right mind. I mean, I think probably some people think that it's a forever house, but it's absolutely not. That's why we're building right out there a 3,000 square foot house on this 2.5 acres that we bought in Atlanta.
See, I'm really, not to hog the mic, but I'm really curious about tiny houses because a while back I watched a minimalist documentary, and then also a documentary all about tiny house living. And the biggest thing that I was always, I guess, curious about is the bathroom situation. Mm-hmm. And especially in a tiny house where, you have all that air and, the smells and everything, just like, your cat box that you have.
Yep.
So is there Do you have like an astronaut toilet or something that just sucks everything out of you, or like
I
what's
do. You put the hose. It's a catheter, and you guys have used a catheter before.
No,
so.
it's long. It's been a while.
No. So actually, this is really interesting, especially for an HVAC crowd. That's what this house is about. Is like the HVAC in this house is what is so stellar about it. So first of all, I'm sitting at the back of the house. This is the house is 13 and a half feet tall on the outside from the ground or road, from the road bed to the top of the house, which is like, you can go under most bridges, right? You get a little nervous when you go down some residential streets. So this is the back of the house. And then up there is the front of the house. This right here, where all of my lights come out, it looks like the trunks of a tree. It kind of resembles a duct system for those of you who, you know, have done like the branch line and then these trunk lines coming out. That is my ventilation supply line. And you can see that right there is where the fresh air from the ERV, which is an energy recovery ventilator, comes in. So that air came through a filter and came through an energy recovery core, which trades the temperature and humidity with the incoming air and the outgoing air. Anyway, it's just kind of like a little battery, basically.
Like a heat exchanger?
A heat exchanger and a humidity exchanger, basically. So anyway, that is where it comes out. I also, inside of that, this is like a little hatch right here where you get my finger. I can open that up and there's a damper in there that I can open up for the secondary trunk line that goes down and it dumps into our bedroom. But what's really interesting, so like the first thing that's interesting there is that I almost always keep that closed because humidity wise, we're in Atlanta and it's wet. It's like so wet out there. And like we've got more, I have seen so many mushrooms in the last couple of weeks. We saw purple mushrooms today. I didn't even know that existed. There are all kinds of stuff. So it's very damp. And if I let humidity in here, first of all, I have a dehumidifier that runs in this house 24 hours a day. It's quiet because it's a desiccant dehumidifier. But if I let the humidity down into that space, what is in my bedroom is all the soft stuff that can absorb moisture. Again, the battery idea in the entire house. Everything else is made out of hard stuff. This is plywood. This is, what do you call, scotch guarded, you know, so it's not going to absorb anything. But down there, if the humidity gets in, it gets into that stuff. And then no matter how much I dry out the air, the humidity will evaporate out of the stuff, all my clothes and blah, blah, blah. Down there. So that's like, we try not to get the fresh air to go down there. First it has to come up here, get conditioned, dehumidified, and then it can wash over the entire house. But anyway, back of the house is where the supplier is brought in. Front of the house is where the bathroom is. And that's where all of the air that's exhausted out, which is 30 CFM, 24 hours a day, gets taken out. So basically what we've got is this tidal movement of air that goes up through the house all the time. That's why you can't smell the litter boxes, because the air hits the litter box immediately before it leaves the house. That's the last thing that happens to it, is it picks up the litter box smell.
Real quick, you had mentioned a desiccant dehumidifier.
Yes, sir.
Now, I'm not really familiar with that. What that is? I know a desiccant is like a drying agent.
Sure.
How does just real quick, how does a desiccant dehumidifier work?
Totally. So there's basically two kinds of dehumidifiers, and normally I've been instructed by my dehumidification expert Lou Harriman not to talk about this because it's incredibly boring. But for this crowd, I think I'm totally into it. So there's two kinds of dehumidifiers. There's refrigerant-based, compressor-based dehumidifiers, which like we're putting ultra air, whole house dehumidifier and an in-wall dehumidifier in the house. Those are both compressor-based. More energy efficient, a little louder. They have a compressor in them. In here, what we've got is the desiccant, which is basically a wheel. It's a lot like the ERV, but it's basically, instead of just a core that sits there and absorbs two-way, it kind of transfers. It's got the desiccant in a wheel, essentially, that spins around, and you pass the air over the desiccant, and it absorbs the humidity, and then it goes down, and it drops it into a drain pan. Yeah. And then I have to empty it. We actually empty it in here. We empty it into our Berkey filter. So we drink the air. We drink the water that comes out of the air in this house. It's pretty cool.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
It's like a little spaceship.
One other thing, by the way, on the topic, I have another one of those desiccant dehumidifiers down the hill in my dry vault, which is the world's most high-performance tool shed. I'm like all about when you find the marketing for how you say these things. So anyway, world's high performance tiny house, world's highest performance tool shed. In there, I keep it dry. I don't condition it. I don't care what temperature it is, as long as my tools are dry. I don't care how hot they get. And so that'll keep drying all the way down. If it's like 30 degrees in that dry vault, it'll still be dehumidified. And a compressor-based one can't dehumidify down at cold temperatures like that. So that's another use for it.
Oh,
it's weird.
what level of dehumidification? Like what's the percentage of humidity that you're?
It's 50. It's not really important yet.
Yeah.
I have a question on ERVs. So I've gotten to many discussions with different guys about ERVs versus HRVs. And one discussion I've had recently is actually another company owner was saying, he was saying, I'm going to install an HRV. And I said, oh, you're not going to do an ERV. He's like, well, we live up north. Why would I do an ERV? So I want to just throw that out to you and kind of see your take on that,
Great. I have a very strong take on it, and it is not based on building science theory. And I think that this is a really important distinction that I would like to make so that everybody knows what we're talking about. I am not a building science expert. I am an expert in testing things, and that's why the Proof is Possible tour is what we took this house on, because proof, like in my mind, thinking that you know something, like I'll tell you right now, I have an ERV installed in this house, even though Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory and my dehumidification expert, who is one of the world's dehumidification experts, he's an ASHRAE fellow who's written books for ASHRAE, told me that I would need an HRV because I would have too much humidity in here. Very nice idea. Totally not true. And so like I lived in this place. We built it in Southern Florida, and then we toured it all the way up the East Coast. And I experienced all kinds of different, it was in April. So it was like it was shoulder season, not freezing cold or anything like that. We never hit snow with this thing until we moved here to Atlanta. But I can tell you for a fact that we went built in Southern Florida, went all the way up the East Coast. We took this place to Death Valley. And in every single spot, an ERV core was the right choice over an HRV. I suffered through an HRV, which is a plastic core. It's plastic lining, until I finally was like, this has got to stop. There's no way that this works properly. And so I yanked that out and I replaced it with a ERV core of the same size. And some manufacturers do that. They make the core is the same, so you can just like swap them out. And that worked perfectly forever. Like I have never, even once, I tossed my HVAC core in the trash literally during the tour, because I was like, I will never need this. So in my opinion, based on my experience with it, ERV is 100% better than HRV, because what you're getting is like, it's a buffer. It's like a solar, if you use a solar system the right way, in my opinion, it's to have a backup. Like power goes out, you have a backup. It's a buffer that's going to like allow you to delay consequences. And so that's really what an HRV does, is allow you to delay consequences of temperature change. But temperature change is like, okay, the temperature changes, it's going to flux. But what really is going to kill your house and make you sick is not temperature change. Temperature change is like, you'll get used to it. Take off clothes, put on clothes, whatever.
Humidity.
But the humidity changes and you got a problem. So having a buffer to the humidity is a huge deal. And that's why I would say in every single climate, except maybe Alaska and Southern Florida, like I'm talking about Miami, I would say ERV over HRV, because everybody says, well, what about when you don't want to dump the shower exhaust, all the humidity from your shower back into your house? And my question is, and I try to be reasonable about this, how long of a shower are you taking every day? Right. My God, like you're in there for 10 minutes. You know how many minutes are in a day? The whole rest of the day, it's drier inside than it is outside during the summertime, when we really care about what the ERV does. So anyway, that's my rant.
I've actually had like a crazy, like I always have some kind of crazy ideas that I'm experimenting with or working on all the time. I ran a second evaporator from my garage off of one single condenser. That's the one thing I just did. I've had this idea I've talked about for a long time about if you have the one thing about showers and bathroom exhausts, the humidity, you're paying to have a humidifier run, you're paying for the water, and if you're using a shower and you're not using it to exhaust stink, right, you're basically getting rid of all the free humidity. So I had a thought of having two separate switches in your bathroom for your fan. One if you're using the toilet, and one in the wintertime if you're using the shower. So you could recirculate the humidity back into your house if you're trying to add humidity to your house. If your humidity is low, like needing a humidifier. That's a thought I had. I don't know. It's crazy, and I'm sure it would be super complicated and expensive with zone dampers, this and that, and most people wouldn't make sense for, but just like, something to think about.
I mean, I think that those kinds of questions are great. Like, have those questions. Anytime anybody is thinking about using the physics of a home and like retuning the physics to make the humidity or the, I break it down into heat flow, airflow and pressure, moisture, and air quality. like contaminants basically is that last element. And if you're thinking about moving any of those things or like redirecting them, that you're practicing the science of homes. Like that's what it is. So I think absolutely keep asking those questions, try it. I think that probably what you find is exactly what you said is going to be complicated. And we all know that the more complicated a system is, the less likely it is to really work on a long-term basis.
Right.
And I think that the other thing, by the way, that is fundamental to my understanding of the science of homes is that like there's no, this idea about the conservation of energy, not the let's conserve energy, but like all energy is conserved within the system. I think just get rid of that. Like you have to have spot exhausts in your kitchen, for example. And like a kitchen is also, to your point, a place where you're creating humidity. And maybe you want that back, but like, no, you don't. You have to just flush it down the toilet and it's gone. Yep. Just like, there's probably some nutrients in your poop. Like, let's be honest. Well, my daughter doesn't even chew her food sometimes. So it's like, if I could actually mine the vitamins out of her poop, and by the way, it doesn't flush a lot of the time, so it has to sit there anyway, and like,
got the same
I have to do something with it anyway, right? So it's like, anyway, I'm just saying, you let some stuff go. That's my thing.
Yeah. Nice.
Interesting. Well, I was going to say, on that note, since we could talk about nutrients in poop and how astronauts use their own fecal matter to grow potatoes on Mars, but that's for another separate show. But
you know what? This is a good time since we're like at there's a transition happening in the conversation here. And by the way, when people have questions, please do like chime in with questions. Like those are my favorite when we get into like some weird creative discussion about some specific problem. But let me kind of explain, if I may, the 4-3-2-1 system of how I think about the science of homes. Sure. Is that all right?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So 4-3-2-1 is this is literally how I think about it. That's what this house and the house that I'm building out there, that's what it is the 4-3-2-1 way of looking at this put into a physical object. So there were 4 elements to the science of homes or home performance: heat flow, airflow and pressure, moisture, and air quality. Those are in increasing order of importance. So heat bleed is what I call it when I want to be like more dramatic about it. Everybody knows heat bleeds into your house in the summertime, bleeds out of it in the wintertime. If you ask a normal homeowner, any of your clients, any of you guys or the people who are watching this, what do you think your house needs to be more energy efficient or high performance or whatever it is you want to say, comfortable? They would probably tell you one of 3 things. I need more insulation. I've been up in my attic and I know I need more insulation. I know we need new windows, all new windows, because TV told me. And I know we probably need an upgraded HVAC system. You're probably going to tell me that I need a 90% or whatever, right? To Bill's point about your house. Those 3 things are probably wrong. And I know that not because of building science theory, it's because I've tested hundreds of houses and I've modeled them in computers based on extensive measurements. And I know exactly what is supposed to actually happen in these houses. It's not those 3 things, but those 3 things all have to do with heat bleed. And so at least people know that heat bleed exists. Airflow and pressure, who's supposed to be the expert on that? All of us on this call, right? And you need to ask yourself, and this is the first step to doing more science in homes, is it possible that I have been making mistakes in my work? Is it possible that I do a bad job sometimes? And I ask myself that question every day, and I get to do that because I'm a beginner. My dad did not teach me how to do this. I don't come from a family of tradespeople. I was telling the guys about this earlier. So it's very easy for me to say, hey, sometimes I'm an idiot. I don't know everything about this. And so I can say that to my clients. But have you been trained and equipped with diagnostic testing equipment to look at the home as a system? No. Most, I would say 99 point whatever percent of HVAC professionals who are out there practicing today in homes do not have the equipment, the diagnostic tools. Maybe they have Measure Quick, which would be a nice thing to start with. Very easy to plug into your existing system to measure airflows, to measure humidity levels in the house. Like maybe you've got one, test probe that you run around with everywhere. So anyway, that's kind of like my point is that you need to, HVAC is where it's at. You guys are the whole picture. If you wanted to be the whole pie on home performance, it's yours. It's already yours. Guys like me get to go in there and be the expert because there are not guys like you in every city. And we just need to get more people like that, right? So anyway, that's airflow and pressure. 2 sides of the same coin. Wherever you have a pressure difference, you're going to be sure there's going to be an airflow if there's a hole in the membrane that separates the two. Moisture. Everything is bad about moisture. If it's too little moisture, drywall cracks, floors are going to peel, blah, 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 blah. Too much moisture, microbes, people get sick, yucky stuff, mold, rot. And then contaminants. Contaminants is a whole, we could get into like a huge discussion about chemistry if you guys really wanted to, but basically chemicals, particles, and microbes are what you're looking at in the contaminant field, and they're a circle. So if you try to kill microbes, you're using chemicals. And right now that's a big deal in people's houses because people are going freaking crazy about using alcohol and ammonia and bleach and blah, blah, blah in combination. Your clients are poisoning themselves right now. And they're poisoning their children right now. Don't care about, all of us are grownups. We're all dead. Don't worry about us. We're talking about children because their little brains are still forming. Their little lungs are still forming. So like, don't even waste your time saying, hey, that might not be healthy for you. Jump immediately to that is going to probably be bad for your baby. That will get people's attention. So once you understand those 4 elements, then you try to start improving them. Number 1 thing is air sealing. Duct sealing is a form of air sealing. Number 2 thing is insulation. Those 2 things very cheap. You only do them one time. They draw no energy. And then the 3rd thing on the list is HVAC upgrades. Very expensive up front, needs to be maintained or replaced, draws energy on a regular basis. Important thing to understand here is that these 3 things boil down into the 2 systems, the enclosure and the engines, which is the skin and circulatory system of your house. If they have a disagreement, one of them always wins. Do you guys know which one it is?
The engines.
HVAC.
No, the enclosure always wins. Yes. HVAC professionals will be taking it from disagreements between these 2 because it looks like it's your fault. You could install an HVAC system that is perfect, that is designed perfectly, is installed exactly according to the directions, that is working exactly the way you intended it to, and it will not work if the enclosure does not agree with it. Because suction pressures and airflows and insulation problems in the enclosure will every single day of the week will beat your HVAC system, and you guys will get the callbacks and you will get the lawsuits. And I have seen that happen again and again and again.
Then that would go back to making sure you do all your homework up front then when you're sizing 100%. A system and doing all that too.
Exactly. Which is why like you can't do a manual J in 10 minutes. And you know, like you got to go out and spend a bunch of time there measuring, doing a blower door test. I don't know if you guys know this, but like your watchers should know that you have to put an air leakage number into the manual J software. The only accurate way to do that is not to use the 5 defaults where it's like leaky, sort of leaky, average, tight, or really
very tight. Yeah.
And it's like, that's stupid. I don't know what that means. And I do this for a living. You have to do a blower door test. If you're going to do a load calc the right way, you must do a blower door test. And I'm going to say that on television to your clients in season 2. And then they're going to say, hey, you're going to do a manual J, right? And they're going to be like, oh yeah, we always do that because it's required by state law in our state. And you're going to do a blower door test, right?
What's that?
I saw on TV that you have to do it if you want to do it accurately. And now your client knows more than you. This is like how far the science has gotten away from the pro group who really should be. You guys like are the owners of this stuff.
So you basically want to like run the entire HVAC industry out of business.
No. What we're trying to do is there are guys, and you guys are some of those guys who want to do it better, who know that there's a way to do it better. And like you make a show about this, right? Like you obviously care, even though he's wearing sunglasses and he's wearing sunglasses and Adam looks like he cares. He's smiling, he's rosy cheek, but like, you know, from all the facade that we put up of like, oh, we don't care, we're tough guys and all this stuff. Like we want to make people's houses better. That's why we do it. Right? It's not because we like being out at 2:00 in the morning fixing somebody's air conditioner. Right. Mm-hmm. So I'm just saying, like, there are guys who are willing to talk better, to smile at people, to try and explain the way that houses work, and to do a good job at what they're doing. And they should be paid more and be given more time to do the same job, right? And that's why guys like, you know, we were talking about HVAC School podcast, and like Brian Orr runs a great company, and it's because he does not give discounts. Like if you think that giving $100 maintenance visit, you know, like if that's going to get you all the clients, like let's make it $29 this month and see if that works. Like, no, it's going to get you clients who want to pay you $29.
Right.
You need clients who are going to pay. Like I have a client right now who's building a 16,000 square foot house.
Wow.
And you know why he hired me? Because there is no HVAC company that he would trust to look at this house. And that's the problem, is that like we need to take what's in my brain and give it to everybody in the HVAC industry, because it's not that hard. Like I'm not a rocket scientist. I'm not an engineer.
that's one of the reasons I wanted you to come on the show, so I can beg you on air to come to Michigan to my house and
Awesome.
and help me assess the faults within my envelope here, because I have the same issue. There's nobody around in my immediate area that can help me.
And you know who, like, you're the HVAC guy.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah,
So,
I had 4 companies come over, and I would hide my van at the neighbor's house, and they'd come over, and I'd have them give me estimates. Nobody measured anything. No airflow, no measuring tapes, no computer software, nothing whatsoever for their their load calculations and their duct designs. None of that. So
now, when this brings up a point, when you first started talking about ripping out your boiler and ducting your house, we started discussing what you should go with, 80% versus 90%. And it kind of, this is back like Justin days. It was the 4 of us with Justin, and it got a little heated, right? Mm-hmm. We were going back and forth on 80% versus 90%. And one of the things
wall during this conversation,
right, one of the things that I was like pushing the point on is, when you're exhausting something out of the house, if you put your hand over the chimney, if you put your hand over a 90% furnace on the outside without an air intake, all that air leaving the house has to come back in, right? Mm-hmm. And even if your house is leaky, this is a way, maybe I'm wrong, you could tell me, Corbett, but if you're exhausting air, it's going to come back in. And it's going to, if you don't have an ERV or somewhere to bring it in, it's going to come in areas you don't want it to come in through, right?
Maybe is the short answer. I mean, I think that really what if you wanted to get like a technical job description of what I do for my clients, it's allowing them to predict and prevent things from happening. So like, it might not happen. Like if Bill was to install anything, let's just say Bill chooses literally anything in the world to install his house, it is possible that nothing bad would happen.
Well, he already has but my question is, could it improve? Because he has a big monster boiler in his basement. It's a natural draft boiler. It's used to having that 80% in his house right now. So I'm not necessarily saying that it would have a ill effect by doing so, because I think he already has that right now. But I'm saying by eliminating that and bringing in your own combustion air, you would actually probably be a little bit better off as far as infiltration.
So,
that's a good point.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. So let me, like, this is a weird philosophical, like, metaphysical thing that I get into when we talk about this kind of thing, because I think that the question is, improve what? Because, for example, if you've got, let's say Bill's got this boiler and it's exhausted out with an atmospheric draft water heater. If you replace that giant 400,000 BTU per hour boiler with thank you very much, with a 90% efficient, and you go out through the sidewall, and now you've orphaned that water heater. Yes, you've improved the energy efficiency of your space. Are you now backdrafting combustion gases because you don't have 400,000 BTUs of help for this little 60,000 BTU water heater?
Well, yes, if you did it right, you would need a chimney liner. You'd need to shrink down the chimney. You couldn't just leave.
Of course. And my only point is, like, everything that you do has side effects in the house, everything. And that's why I think people should be testing their homes before they do anything to their house. If you're going to remodel a bathroom, test your house, because it's possible that there's weird things going on. And what you're about to do with, like, just changing a bath fan. Like, I'll give you an example right here. And I'm going to give you an example for my client that's got the 16,000 square foot house in a second. My blower door test on this tiny lab is 50 CFM. That's what it takes to get to 50 pascals. Okay. So you don't have to understand what a blower door test is to understand that if I was to go to Home Depot and buy a bath fan off the shelf and install it in my bathroom, what is that bath fan going to run?
Probably no idea. Probably at least 50, if not more 50, than 50.
Right? It's going to run 50. So every time I turn on that bath fan, I will be doing a blower door test on this house. And that is a surefire way to grow mold and destroy this house. If I had any combustion appliances at all in this house, I would have a major problem with combustion gases now. I'd have all kinds of weird things happen moisture-wise. It would stink in here terribly. It would just be like the worst thing possible. So that's where you go to a tiny house show. Like, go see how many bath fans you see in bathrooms. I guarantee you, there's a bunch of bath fans in there. Ask them what they use to insulate. They're going to say spray foam because they think spray foam is the best, which it's not, but whatever. That's what they're using. And so, is the house airtight? 100%. Are they doing a dumb thing by depressurizing the base? Yes, they have. So, like, that's my point, is that it's everything you do is going to have an impact, and you just want to make sure to like see ahead, get 2 steps ahead of that impact and predict it and say, does that impact matter? And do I want to do anything about that? And now I can have a discussion with my client. And what I want to get to real quick is that I have this client who I don't have time to do a manual J right now for this guy, but I handed him off to a guy who I know who's great, and he's like very affordable. And so I said, here, work with Fred. Fred's great. Fred, interface with me once you've done your elite thing, and I'll look at the file and check it out. And so basically this client got on the phone with him, and he was like, all right, here's what we got: 2 dishwashers in the kitchen. I got 3 fireplaces. I want to put 6,500 watts of blah, blah, blah. And anybody who's run a manual J knows you do not take all of these numbers and put them into your defaults, because what you're modeling is the design hour, right? The like hottest day in the summertime at 4 o'clock in the afternoon when everybody's coming home. And then all of a sudden we're going to model in the computer that we're going to turn on all the dishwashers. We're going to turn on all the ranges. We're going to have all the exhaust running. Fireplaces running the same. Like, and then I want to model 20 people in the dining room, 20 people in the study, and 150 people in the living room.
Yeah, grossly oversized the system, I would imagine.
Right. But, and here is what the big metaphysical thing for me is, like, absolutely do that. Model that the way he wants, and then save as at the end, and do it for real with 2 people in the living room or whatever, and blah, 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 and like your default kitchen loads, and that's it. And then we'll give him both files, and he can make up his own freaking mind about whether he wants to have a giant crazy system that's not going to work for 99% of the year, or do it right. But you're giving him information, and that's what it's really all about, is like, don't go in and say, this is going to make your house better by doing this, because like that doesn't make any sense. It's like, what do you care about? I care about air quality for my family. Great. Let's talk about blah, blah, blah. In fact, let me just say right now that you should not be talking about ionizing or electrostatic anything. If you're talking about air quality, talk about filters and airflow. Yeah. That's it. So anyway, I'm sorry to get on a soapbox for like.
I was wondering, you mentioned in your 3,000.
Can I jump in?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
She's my translator sometimes.
Go for
but also,
it.
I feel like when he does podcasts, I can't hear you guys, but when he does podcasts like this, at this moment, everybody just feels like they've just stood in front of the fire hose.
Sorry.
So I'm apologizing for his fire hose mouth.
I don't apologize.
Oh, no, it's not bad. It's not as bad as I thought it would be.
Good. I'm sorry, you were going to say, Adam.
No, I was just going to ask. I know you mentioned dehumidification. I'm assuming you live in a high relative humidity state, I guess down south somewhere. I was wondering, with that dehumidification system, you could say, aka heat pump, where are you transferring this heat? Are you transferring this heat somewhere else so you could use that heat? And I'm not familiar with Ultra because you're doing the whole house. And even for your HVAC system, what company are you using, and who sized your equipment? Did you do, or someone else like Brian Orr sized it?
Sure. No, I sized my own equipment. I did not do the duct design because I don't know how to do duct designs, but I want to learn. I think that's like a really important frontier for all of us to understand. Not for Bill, because he works in commercial buildings. And
I don't care about airflow.
But I think that, I do. So I did the energy modeling and the load calc on mine just so that I could know. And I did it in both right soft and elite because I wanted to work with both. I happen to have my preference because I'm boring and I like numbers and just putting in like values and squares. So anyway, so this house has a Mitsubishi mini split. They've been a partner of ours for a long time. They're actually a sponsor of the PBS show too. And so like, I really try to hang on to companies once they're like, oh, we love the Kool-Aid of the science of homes. Like, oh my God, please never leave because I need your help. We don't make a lot of money. So I'm like, I need money. Give me money so I can make a television show about this. And then we've got this Desiccant dehumidifier in here. We've got an ERV. This is a Broan. All the ventilation equipment in this house is Broan. In the big house, we've got Fantech ventilation equipment, which is 2 ERVs. I've got 2 separate like enclosures in the house. So 2 ERVs, 2 HEPA filtration systems, which is like MERV 17 roughly.
Yeah.
those blow 240 CFM and kind of like link up with the ducted system in the big house, which is a Mitsubishi heat pump that runs on hyperheat. So that means that it has no backup heat strips, because I did not want to go on television and say, hey, you should put a heat pump in your house. And by the way, you need to put a toaster on it, because that's stupid. So I was like, I got to wait until this new model comes out. So it's a 2-ton, it's 3,000 square feet. I got 2 tons on the ducted system for 2,200 square feet. And then I've got a 9,000, which is upsized because that is the party room. So like it runs on an inverter. It can go way down to like, I don't know, 2,000 or something like that in the summertime.
Oh yeah, smart.
Low. Anyway, that's 9,000. So I've got 2 3/4 tons for the whole house. And then we've got a whole house dehumidifier and a room dehumidifier for the big room. That's the separate space. Does that answer your questions? And it's
so obviously we get dehumidifiers. We want efficiency. So how they design them, you and I know, is they could transfer that heat somewhere else in the space, or I guess water if you have it, and not just bring the heat outside. So I was just wondering if you have. It's like a reheat coil.
Yeah.
So I was wondering if you have any reheat coils, or if you have it heating up your domestic water on a heat exchanger. Just what does the Ultra Air have? A coaxial condenser?
Yeah, it's just classic. It's pretty high efficiency. So the temperature coming out of it is not incredibly high. It's like, I would say, I haven't measured it, but I would say it's no more than 10 degrees. So it's not like, so if it's coming in 70, it's going out 80. You can't do anything with 80 degree. Like, what am I going to do? So no, it just reheats the space. In fact, this is one of the proofs of doing this work that I love so much. It's like, I'm building my own house, and that house is airtight. It's passive house airtight at this point. I beat passive house by like a mile at this. It was passive house airtight. Just so you don't know, passive house is the most rigid building certification in the world. I don't particularly care to get my house certified, but I like to know that like I'm beating them. So passive house is 0.6 air changes. My house is 0.4 air changes. So a 0 would be a perfect Coke bottle tight house.
Wow.
So anyway, it's that. And then we've got the walls exterior insulated only 2 inches. And the foundation is insulated with 3 inches. No insulation in the roof at all. You walk into that house today on a 90-degree day when it's 90% relative humidity outside. And I've got a dehumidifier running. That's the only thing that's running in that house, which actually pumps out hot air. And it feels like it's air conditioned in the house.
Wait.
It's incredible.
So let me back up. Did you say you only have 2 inches of exterior insulation on your house? There's nothing on the inside?
Yes. We are about to insulate. We just passed our electrical inspection, so we're about to insulate with 3.5 more inches of insulation in the cavities. So we'll have like 5.5 inches total, 2 of which is continuous.
And you already hit your 0.4?
Yep.
Just with the
that you do before you do any insulation at all, so that if you have any problems. We actually did, you guys would love this, we did a hurricane test on this house. I don't know that this has ever happened on video or on television before, but we're going to put it on the season 2 of the television show. We had a guy who's a wood scientist come out with a pressure washer.
A wood scientist?
Yes. Yeah. He's a building scientist, but he specializes in wood. Oh. So anyway, we put the house under 1 inch of water column negative pressure. I got my blower door running up to 250 pascals negative. Wow. And then we sprayed it down with a pressure washer to try and force water to go through the walls and through the roof.
Oh yeah, I see what you're
saying. And then we used an infrared camera to find every place where there was water squirting through. And then we marked them and we fixed them. And that's how you really do it. Like if you really care about how this is, then that's one of the things that like my buddy Neil Comparetto said about HVAC. The first step to having tight ducts is you have to want them to be tight. And that's like a big step for a lot of guys. They just don't, it's hard to care enough.
Yeah. I've had a guy, I have a friend of mine, he has an insulation company. He does blower door testing, duct blasting and that. And I had him come out to a job to do a duct blaster test. And he's like, I got to remember how to use this. I'm like, why is that? And he's like, cause I stopped using it. Mm-hmm. And I asked him why. And he's like, because every job I would go to commission, they would always fail. And all the companies would always get pissed off at me all the time. So I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yep. Yeah, I generally say that to somebody. If it's their first test they've ever done, I tell them right up front, you are going to fail this test probably. Like 90% certain. I always get paid up front. So I'll set up the equipment, give me a check right now or your credit card. And then we'll run the test. And then you know that I'm telling you the truth because I don't have to tell you that you pass when you actually don't. And then sometimes you can fix it because you're missing by like, 2%. And so you can go ahead and like try and fix some stuff while I'm there. But yeah, it's hard to do that stuff. But again, it's like, it's not that hard. I mean, if I can do it, I just passed my duct tightness for my ERV system in the studio. I got 1.6%. 4% is the tightest that you're ever going to be required by minimum code.
Now, before the show, you had mentioned that you're actually doing all of your own ductwork.
Yes.
I
got an incredibly high bid, and it made me think like, oh, wow, it's a message from the universe. I should install my own system.
Now, are you doing any of the other work yourself, or are you hiring it all out, just designing things and overseeing things?
I told you that we don't make a lot of money. So part of it is like, we have to do this. I get partners to like give me equipment. I'm like, hey, I would love to use this. I will show it off because I think it's amazing. Give it to me. And I'll do something.
You're not like just building it out of driftwood and things you find in alleyways and stuff.
Actually, no, that's a big thing. Our house looks like it's made out of driftwood. If you look at it on YouTube, again, the channel is called Home Performance, but it's got this, the siding on it right now is called drift, partly because it looks like driftwood, but it is not reclaimed. Nothing in this house or in that house is reused or reclaimed because that is very chemically very dangerous to do for your family. Like, crazy stuff. So yeah, don't use pallets. Don't use stuff you find on the side of the road to install in your house. That's just not safe to do.
I watched a documentary. I think it was called "What's That Smell?" maybe, and it was all about off-gassing of just anything you buy, really. And it was talking about. It started off with a father who bought some clothes for his kid, and he wondered why they smelled so bad. He dug deeper into it and found out all the chemicals that they used in it. And one of the things I was going to ask you about before was spray foam. On one of your interviews from a previous podcast, I heard you talking about spray foam and the, I guess, not really negative effects, but the off-gassing that it has.
Yes.
Now, I assume you don't have any spray foam in your house you're building and or your tiny house, correct?
Correct. And it's not just spray foam. So let me make sure that I'm clear on this, because spray foam is a very touchy topic. You talk to the spray foam guys and they say that it's the best thing that's ever happened in civilization.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever, that's fine. I have met people and I've interviewed them for my podcast that say spray foam is like the most evil thing ever, and all the companies that do it are rotten and dirty and they're all covering up stuff. I don't think either of those is true. What I will tell you for a fact, scientific proof, is in the early 1980s, the Consumer Product Safety Commission was lobbied by a woman named Arlene Bloom to remove this carcinogenic, mutagenic chemical from kids' jammies. It was used as a flame retardant.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, okay, you're not allowed to use these in kids' jammies anymore. That's what they said. So guess what happened? Did they shut all the factories down? Like, no.
They just changed the name to natural chemicals or natural.
Well, what they did is they said, okay, we need to find some products to put this in. And so where they found it instead was, let's put these in building insulation and in furniture foam. So the carcinogenic, mutagenic chemical for flame retarding that was in kids' jammies in the 1980s is now in all spray foam, no matter whether it's soy or coconut or blah, 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 whatever. By the way, all those have polyurethane in them. You can't not have polyurethane in spray foam. And in rigid foam, even like sub-slab, you bury foam in the ground, it's legally required to have flame retardants in it. The flame retardant test that they run on these things to show that it's got the proper amount of flame retardant is a candle for 12 seconds. If you can imagine any fire in the world, if anybody's actually seen a fire, a candle for 12 seconds is the most dumb test I can possibly imagine. Like, there is no reason for anybody to say that that passes anything in a house. It's behind drywall, first of all. The drywall is tested to a standard that's much more rigid than like a candle for 12 seconds. So why is there flame retardants in it? Aside from the other chemicals, the flame retardants are really what you should be careful of, because they will, gas chemicals go through materials like drywall, like sheet metal, like anything on your house. So if you've got spray foam or foam insulation, even on the outside of your house, it's leaving the foam, because things that are high concentration, everything goes from high to low. It's one of the rules of science, right? So high concentration evaporates down to low concentration. So it's trying to find places where there's not as big a population of these flame retardants, and it's always coming out of there. So yeah, that's the bottom line on foam insulation in general. So yes, our house is foam free. There's a few select places where we do have foam, but it's for a very specific purpose. Like we have Hercules equipment pads, because high density closed cell foam does a really good job of making an equipment pad that's going to last a long time, but like it's outside the house.
Now to my house, to my point in my house here, where, again, it's 130 years old. We still have the original plaster, the walls. I if there is insulation in the walls, it's old chopped up newspapers or something. So
Horsehair.
Yeah, or that too. And so what I was considering as I'm thinking about going through remodels in the next few years is, how am I going to go about re-insulating this house? Like when I tear out some of this plaster, I'm not going to tear out all the plaster. Some of it's still good. Some I want to keep original. So my next thought was, well, maybe I can look into spray foams. Now, what would be your recommendation to a house like mine, which is no doubt not going to pass any sort of blower door testing whatsoever?
Don't think about passing. Like what you're trying to do is, it's just like, okay, so let's still like use the medical analogy, because I like Chuck Palahniuk books, which always have medical analogies in them, like Fight Club and stuff like that. It's all about bodies and like gross.
I like Gary Larson books.
Okay, same thing. So essentially, I'm not going to Google that, by the way. Essentially, what you got is, if you have, I know who Gary Larson is. I love him. If you have a body of a guy who is 41, let's use me as an example, and who sits on his ass all day long watching YouTube videos of like guys doing plumbing and tiling, which is pretty much describes my life, except for the sitting on my ass thing. And I decide that I want to renovate my body by having an Olympian's heart put in. It makes no sense, because my arteries are all clogged. So like, I can put this great heart in, it's not going to make me an Olympian, because the whole system, like I got to look at my appendix, I got to look at my spleen, I got to look at my liver, I got to look at my legs, I got to look at my circulation, blah, blah, blah. My skin, my diet, my exercise, all this stuff. So that's why when you do, what I always say is you should test before you do anything. And it's not because you're looking for whether the house passes or not. It's like, let's assess the situation. Let's take the house's vitals. And that's, like you said, to your point earlier, where you had 4 different HVAC companies come in. None of them took even a tape measure out. This is the disease of the construction industry right now. It's like guys come in, they're open their big mouth and make a recommendation without having any information. They have not inspected, they have not tested anything. And they say, here's what you need. That's bullshit. Like we can just say that out front. There's no way that that's real. So if you want to look like you're not bullshit, at least pull out a tape measure and do this. If you did that, you would be the least bullshitty person in your entire market.
Yeah, even if they're just pretending, just like reading off numbers that aren't even on there. You don't have to do it.
I tell my students, wear a manometer, wear an infrared camera around your neck, carry a manometer on your belt. You walk into somebody's hospital room and you say, here, take this pill. No, they're not going to do it. If you're wearing a stethoscope, are they going to at least think about taking that pill? Fuck yeah. You wear the uniform, tuck in your shirt, smile, look like a professional, right? So like you're playing a different game all of a sudden when you do that. That's what I'm really trying to do, is not break the HVAC industry. It's just like teach guys who want to take themselves more seriously, that there is like literally you can steal everyone else's clients in one day if you actually did the stuff that is possible and that people will be seeing on TV, whether any of us likes it or not. So anyway, to your point though, like what you want to do is take your vitals of your house, put it on a treadmill, test its blood pressure and its heart rate and blah, 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 all that stuff. And then say, okay, what does this house need right now? Because if it doesn't need anything because it works perfectly well, great. And I've had plenty of clients say, hey, I just want to test my house. And then I go out and I'm like, you know what, actually, are you guys happy? Because this house is actually, it's totally weird, but it's weird tuned together. Everything is weird in an equally tuned way. And so it's like, it works. Do not touch this house. One of our friends in Boston has a tree growing, like they built the house around a tree and there's a tree in the basement. Whole basement is dirt. House is 300 years old.
The whole basement is dirt.
Do not touch this house. Do not replace any windows. Do not add any insulation. I swear to God, if you touch this house, something is going to go horribly wrong. Right now, it's perfect. Don't do anything. So yeah, that's kind of like how it works, is that sometimes, it's fine.
But the thing is, it matters if they're comfortable as well, because maybe if I go into that house, the humidity and the moisture will kill me, but I guess they're used to it, so they're comfortable. And I think it just always stems back to the client, if they're comfortable, and that's what we're trying to solve. Now,
kind of, but I will say humidity is a thing to take really seriously, because you can grow mold on. Anybody seeing this thing? If you guys take your flashlight next time you're in a client's house and look up in this fucking chasm.
Oh, I know, absolutely.
And that's antimicrobial plastic.
Yeah.
Just so everybody's clear.
Now, I don't know if you've had the pleasure yet. Have you had the pleasure of cleaning that yet?
I have. I actually have a video. That's the first video ever. Mitsubishi didn't even have a policy on how to teach people to do this. By the way, I have a inline with Carrier that they have a mini split now that can be taken apart with one screw. You take one screw out and the entire head comes apart.
Oh, cool.
That would be a game changer. Yeah, this thing takes like, I have to rewatch my own video that's 17 minutes long every time I do it.
I hate them. I think it comes down to just old tricks. There's some very good techs out there, and I think it comes to old habits and how you get brought up. Because Adam and I know, for when it comes to, let's say, even duct sizing, there's a myth that you just all of a sudden put, let's say, what is it on the ductulator in the friction rate?
Everyone says just set it to 0.1. I'm like,
right
it's
away.
funny you set it to 0.1 in the ductulator for residential, because it is a wheel and it spins. So if it was supposed to be at 0.1, you shouldn't be able to spin it, right?
That's
on
right.
a ductulator.
That's right. And that's something I've noticed along the way. It's just bad habits, and I guess just
lack of motivation too. I think
motivation to upgrade yourself.
Yeah.
But and that's a big one, I think, right there, of duct sizing and how to do duct work, and essentially. But
we are starting to run out of time, but there was a couple questions in the chat I just wanted to ask beforehand. Somebody was asking, what kind of IAQ, air monitors are you using? I guess maybe in the house and or
good question.
The tiny lab.
Okay. So this is a big one. I've worked with actual chemists who use, like one of their pieces of equipment will be $300,000. So I'm just going to say right now that no matter what you are thinking about buying, it is not laboratory equipment. So it's going to give you some like good stuff. And if what you're looking for is marketing, then great. If you're looking for like actionability, that's a little bit more difficult. So I'd say that right now there is a company called AirThinks with an X at the end.
Fancy.
Yeah, supposedly fancy. I keep trying to talk to them because of what we do, and I'm like, hey, I want to show people your thing. And if I can't get a hold of somebody, I'm a little bit like, I'm not sure if I should tell people about this. But anyway, you should look into it at least. But they have a $1,200 monitor, I believe, that does a bunch of different things. Having data is good. You want fast data because you guys are going to be in people's houses for like, let's just say an hour, is the inside. You need data in that hour. So there's one tool that I have called the CPS Pro Air or Smart Air Pro or something like that. But CPS is the name of the company. And it's about this big and it glows, and glowing is important for your clients. And it'll give you some readings in 20 minutes. I do not have data on how accurate any of these are. In fact, they're all probably pretty inaccurate if you were to compare them to a real big thing, expensive piece of equipment. But I'd say that what we should all be looking forward to is Fantech, Broan, Renew Air, companies like that make ventilation are coming out with noses for rooms. So like a thermostat, but you'd install these things in the rooms, and it basically gives the house a nose to say, ooh, it's getting a little stinky in here. We need to kick up the ventilation. And it does things with the information, because just having information about like how many VOCs are in my house, you have a nose. Your nose is actually a much better VOC monitor than anything you could buy on the market right now. So anyway, that's kind of like what you need to do with it is you need action taken with it. And I will say this, though. It's really important that people understand that things that are like ozone generators, terrible. No one who's listening to my voice right now should ever even consider or let their clients consider buying an ozone generator for a house. Terrible idea 100% of the time. Things that are air cleaners that say that they don't create ozone are probably lying. Because it's impossible. Ozone is very sticky. Once it's created, it's going to want to react with another molecule nearby immediately. Well, VOC generally. And so if it finds one, and it's gone. And so you test the air for ozone. It's like, oh, no, there isn't any. Well, that's not because there wasn't any a minute ago. It's because it all just reacted and created a whole bunch of new chemicals in your house. And now your house is a chemical experiment. And by the way, that's what is happening inside all you guys' houses right now, including mine. Chemical experiment. No one knows what's going on. It's crazy.
No, I agree.
I remember when you were first coming together with the Tiny Lab, you were showing air monitors. If I remember correctly, there was 2 or 3 of them that you had. One was a Fubot, I think it was called.
Yep. I don't know. I heard that Fubot is not going to be around much longer. I don't know if that's true or not, but I don't talk to those guys. I'm not sure. CPS was a founding sponsor of season 1, and so they really cared about getting the science of homes out. I don't know. They haven't come out with any new products in the last year, so I don't know whether they're actually innovating anymore. But this thing that I was just mentioning, the Smart Air thing, was the last thing that they came out with before we weren't working together anymore. So Fubot Spec was another one. AirThinks, though, is one that I don't have any experience with, but a guy named Joe Medosh, who is a big time in air quality, he was like carrying it around at AHR, sticking out of his backpack, and he was getting great data all day long. So like if he loves something, I generally take that really seriously.
And that was the CPS you're talking about?
No, that's the Air Thinks with an X at the end.
Cool.
But CPS is $400. So if you want to just sink $400 into something, or like, you know, whatever, that's probably what I would steer you towards. They also make the $400 flow hood.
Somebody else was asking, what do you do about carbon dioxide in a house? Like, are you, you know, that's basically the question. Like, what do you do with your breath in a house if it's so tight?
Are you hallucinating a lot?
Okay, interesting. So in this house, like, so first of all, carbon dioxide is created by us, right? That's one of the byproducts. By the way, VOCs, if you're monitoring VOCs in the house, they're created by us too. That's just smells. So, so they're created by us, and that is generally a like sign of stale air is the carbon dioxide levels rise. So if you monitor carbon dioxide in somebody's bedroom at night and they close the door and the door's not undercut enough and you don't have a dedicated return in the room, the room gets starved for air circulation. And so now you have an elevated level and you get a little, whatever, you feel woozy in the morning. So the problem is that most people don't understand that the code says you need to build houses more airtight. And everybody who's in the HVAC world needs to understand that houses are being built more airtight, whether you like it or not.
Absolutely.
And you also need to, if you're going to build them that way, have a dedicated ventilation system that's a mechanical ventilation system. Who's supposed to install this? You guys, clearly. Yeah. But the electrician is doing it right now, or the plumber, or whoever says, oh, I'll do that, because they've stepped up and said, oh, I want to understand how this stuff works. Most of them should have no business doing that stuff. Electricians should not be installing bath fans. That should be the HVAC guy job, right?
Yeah, so, here it's code, actually. They have to. But I think they just came up with 2 years ago. Yeah, you have to have an HRV or some kind of ERV.
Yeah.
Bring pressure.
And by the way, you don't generally, that's a misreading of code. And if there was an exception applied for that, they would absolutely win it, because there's no way to say one ventilation strategy is better than another. You could just have a bath fan that runs 24 hours a day. That's lame, and it's not going to work very well, but you can do that. So yeah, it's like not very hard to get your head wrapped around this. I've got a bunch of videos on our YouTube channel. If you guys want to link people to our channel, that people can go
definitely.
Yes,
how that works.
For sure.
Now, is there
so to answer the question succinctly, ventilation is required in a house that's airtight, period.
Well, how many, what'd you say you mentioned? How many changes were you getting in that little house?
In this house, once an hour, which is insane.
That's insane. You'll never get that in a house.
That's correct, and you should not, because tiny houses are stupid.
That's true.
Oh, by the way, let me just say, I say that as a joke. This house is running on 15 amps right now. I have this house plugged in with a normal extension cord into a power pole out there, and it's like I could pull up to your house and plug my house into your toaster outlet. Jeez. And I could run everything in this house at the same time. This mini split is running, that dehumidifier is running, our giant filmmaking computer is running, all of our lights are on. So it's not, you can do it awesomely, but tiny houses as a general idea, not a good idea.
Interesting.
Susie also asked, she said there was a tiny house. She called it the Yankee tiny house that you showed off on one of your videos. She wants to know how much did that cost?
Nope, I don't do that.
No.
I'm sorry. I don't. Susie, I am so glad that you are into the tiny house thing. I would be happy to talk with you offline about it. I am saying things about tiny houses disparagingly, not entirely seriously, but I will say I do not show off other people's tiny houses because I do not believe in tiny houses as a solution. The reason being that in a tiny house is exactly like a big house, except everything is closer to your face. And people who generally are trying to build tiny houses are like, I have environmental sensitivity, or I want to like get away from the sickliness of my house off-gassing. Mm-hmm. And you can't not have a house off-gas. So like this is a much more dangerous place. This is infinitely more dangerous for your family to live in 200 square feet than it is to live in 3,000 square feet.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense, I guess.
I'm also not a fan of tiny houses, but
now he says it. Jeez.
They are interesting.
Lured me onto your show.
I mean, I was going to wait to see what you had to say about tiny houses, but yeah, I'm like, man, they are stupid. It's like you're living in the trunk of a car.
The sad thing is, Grace and I have been married for 16 years, and we would have married couples come in here, and they'd be like, I would love to live here by myself.
Yeah.
We love it. If you have a family,
where's your wife's tiny house at?
Yeah, right. This is how we roll. See, I'm hanging out here. She's hanging out on the stairs with the cat, eating some cereal. 10 o'clock at night, Friday.
I think that's the ultimate test for any couple. If you can live together for 4 years in a tiny house, you made it. You're good.
Yeah. Yeah. We knew pretty
Exactly.
fast.
Awesome.
Sort of an off-topic question. So, since you've been married so long with your wife, is your wife starting to get on board of the like the airflow stuff? Is she sort of your understudy or second in command of?
No, she's
this?
actually like the reason that there is a television show about the science of homes is her. There have been lots of other guys like me who understand the technical side of building science and can explain it fairly simply to people, but there has been no one like her in this field. So she's the television producer, and she's like, frankly, the steering of this, where we've gone, and this building of this house and the building of that house and the land we live in. We relocated to Atlanta from Chicago.
Oh,
that's all her. So yeah, she's like the muse in the family.
So
she's also the translator. She understands a lot of this stuff.
So she would be the person to send our audition tapes to?
100%, yes.
Okay, good. Okay, good.
And if you guys come to Atlanta, you are absolutely invited onto my my channel.
Awesome.
So,
I linked
and
your
your beard
email.
can come too, by the way.
Heck
I
yeah.
don't know if it detaches or whatever, but
Awesome.
bring
This is how I test airflow. I just open a door.
If the spit dries out in 5 seconds, then it's like 200 CFM.
That's how I test humidity. Airflow is you just crack a door, and if it starts fluttering, I'm like, yeah, you're at like 5 pascals, whatever that is. And you need some spray foam.
That's the other thing, you know.
Tape measure, Bill. Tape measure. You got to do that
And
first.
they're over here, and it's like, oh, that's like 14 millimeters.
That's another thing I have complaints about when guys are still using sling psychrometers. Oh, that makes me laugh. I think those things are a joke. But anyways, I linked your channel in the chat. So if you guys want to see his YouTube channel,
We'll also
Home
post it in the
performance.
description
Cool.
when this is over.
Definitely.
Cool, yeah. And yeah, on that channel, you can see all, like over 60 videos of the building of this house, and then I think we're over 90 of the building of the 3,000 square foot house too. And yes, to answer your question from earlier, we're doing everything on the house. Me and my parents literally did everything except the foundation, concrete pouring, and the siding and roofing. All the framing.
Learning a lot, I bet.
Exactly.
Yeah, like I said, they're finishing the deck tomorrow. So my parents are almost 70. They're awesome.
Wow, you got them out in this heat just building a deck, huh?
Keeps them fit.
I guess if they want to get their food rations for the day, they better do what they're told. Yeah. Good idea.
He has
My
a
mom
slave
then
company.
feeds us at the end of the day. She cooks for everybody too. So
See?
yeah, they're troopers.
Wow. Well, I tell you, Corbett, it's been a pleasure having you on the show.
Thanks.
I think we're just a little bit over our time for the night, but yeah, I learned probably more than I have learned in a little while now.
Awesome. That's great. It was a pleasure talking with you guys. This is a fun format. I'm happy to come back if you want.
That would be
Heck
great.
yeah.
Just ring a bell.
All right, guys. Well, I think everybody's had enough overtime for this week, so let's make our way out of here. What do you guys say?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
See ya.
All right, guys. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.
Wow!